I'm Julie Bartke with Session Update. The Senate debated the Higher Ed Conference Committee report on Friday. It appropriates $250 million in new money to higher ed, imposes a 2-year tuition freeze at the University of Minnesota. It does allow for the MnSCU system to raise its tuition up to 3%. We'd like to show you now some of Senator Terry Bonoff describing her legislation.
We did have as our committee vision that every student complete some form of post-secondary education. And we had that vision so that we could accomplish 3 things. Number one, that our new and emerging sectors in Minnesota grow. So for example, manufacturing and the biotech industry. That we lead the world in life-saving research, that the University of Minnesota is the world leader when it comes to disease prevention and really life-saving medical device research, and then turning that research into products that go on for decades. That we harness our creative and innovative strengths so that our young people turn those strengths into the genius work that will lead our nation. Our bill lays the foundation for all of this to occur. We make historic investments in our institutions and our students while demanding accountability for our taxpayers.
This bill really focuses on making higher education more affordable for our college students, specifically by freezing tuition at both MnSCU and the University of Minnesota, as well as investing more money in the state grant program. And there's a very good change in the state grant program that will benefit our part-time students. And in addition to everyone that Senator Bonoff and Senator Clausen have thanked, I want to give a very special thank you to the college students. They were very involved in this legislation, and I've met with them on several different occasions. And because of their leadership, we've come up with a very good proposal on the state grant program. And we also take a look at workforce development, and we're trying to make sure that our college graduates are meeting the needs of the workforce, and we still have work to do in regards to that, but this is a step in the right direction.
Members, a tuition freeze is really a real cut in the cost of education when you take into account inflation, a cut at least in the contribution made by those who are being educated. And I would just hope that going forward we could have a more open conversation about allowing modest, realistic tuition increases, and we can continue to support these institutions through the legislature, but we ought not tie their hands and do this trade for tuition freezes when we mandate it or allot a certain amount of money, because then what happens, members, is when we don't meet the demands of these post-secondary institutions, they point their finger at us because we've done it in the past. And so it creates this false perception that I think the legislature is responsible for tuition when in fact it rightfully and should be the post-secondary institutions.
If you look at the actual cost for an education, for a year of education at MnSCU school, 4-year institution, or the University of Minnesota, and you asked a student or a student's family to pay for that, they'd say, well, we can't afford it. Without going into debt, it just cannot be affordable. I think the challenge for our higher education institutions ought to be to say, you should be able to figure out how to provide a 4-year education to families, middle-class families, that they can afford, and to continue to go back to the legislature and say, just continue to subsidize this so that we can continue to do whatever we're doing that causes this inflationary pressure to go up and up and up. That is unacceptable.
The university has embarked on a course to work with an outside consultant to look at what's possible with regard to other Big Ten universities and like-minded public-private institutions, and they are deeply and profoundly committed to reform and to really redesigning how they deliver higher education, and including the blended online structure with regard to MnSCU. And by the way, in both systems, we have language in this bill that requires significant decrease in expense. as part of their performance metrics. But MnSCU is working with a former executive from General Mills who's helping to lead that effort of how to redesign and reform the cost side of things.
The bill passed by a final vote of 44 to 21. Now, as the session winds down, our work at Senate Media Services continues at full speed. You can track our work by following us on our Facebook, our YouTube, and our Twitter accounts.